The prismaVENT 40. prismaVENT 40 is a pressure-controlled positive pressure ventilator manufactured in Hamburg, Germany by Lowenstein Medical and supplied and supported in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland by Respicare. prismaVENT takes ambient air through a filter at the rear of the ventilator and passes that air through the outlet at the front, delivering the therapy set by the prescriber. This NIV device must be used with a leakage circuit, meaning that there must be an exhale port at the patient end of the breathing tube. prismaVENT can be used to provide therapy to patients via face mask or tracheostomy tube. With its long-lasting inbuilt battery, which can last for over 11 hours continuously, and its light weight, the user's ability to operate prismaVENT 40 while on the move is maximised. prismaVENT is extremely quiet with a brilliant high-contrast display that gives perfect view from any angle. prismaVENT has a long list of available therapy modes and up to 3 ventilation programs packed into intuitive menus, ensuring ease of use by both clinicians and patients. Optional additions include an attachable humidifier, modules for SpO2 and a nurse call, and an attachable modem for remote monitoring, making prismaVENT an entirely versatile therapy device and an excellent choice for treating your patient's ventilatory requirements. With each new prismaVENT 40, you'll receive the NIV device itself, a mains power cord, a standard reusable breathing tube, an oxygen connection, a pack of 2 air filters, a pack of 12 pollen filters, and a user manual. At the rear of the device, you'll find that there are already an air filter and a pollen filter inserted into the filter compartment at the air inlet. For home use on a monthly basis, the air filter would be cleaned and reused when dry, and the pollen filter would be replaced. However, in the clinical setting, for the purposes of infection control, it's recommended to also replace each filter every time the ventilator is used with a new patient. The oxygen connector can be inserted into its connection at the rear of the ventilator by pushing it in fully and clicking it into place. When there is a requirement to use oxygen with prismaVENT, an oxygen tube can be attached to this fitting. When the ventilator is turned on and delivering therapy to the patient, any oxygen entrained through this connection will be mixed with the airflow from the device and passed to the patient. When treatment is stopped and the ventilator is turned off, the supply of oxygen to prismaVENT from this connection will cut off as a safety measure, allowing no oxygen through. The oxygen should also be switched off when no therapy is applied to the patient, but in the event that someone might forget to switch off the oxygen, the tube may pop off this connection once enough line pressure has built up. However, it's also possible to entrain oxygen via any standard oxygen fitting on the mask or in the breathing tube. If this is your preferred method of entraining oxygen, it's fine to continue entraining oxygen in this way and not use the oxygen connection at the rear of the ventilator, although it is safer to use the designated oxygen port at the rear of the ventilator. If you've already inserted this connection and you want to remove it, simply press the button to the side and pull it out. The mains power cable can be connected to the power connection at the rear of the ventilator. Once connected, the cable can be secured by using the mains cable support, which prevents accidental disconnection from power. The plug can be inserted into the mains socket on the wall. On the right side of prismaVENT 40 there is a rubber plug. When this plug is removed, you will expose the back of an SD card which will contain all usage information from the device. Press the SD card to eject it. To reinsert it, simply press it all the way back in and reattach the rubber protector. At the front, you'll see the outlet port where the breathing tube will be attached. Above this, you will see a connection which is for the optional heated breathing tube for prismaVENT. On the fascia panel, you will see the large display screen surrounded by buttons with various symbols. Working anti-clockwise, these buttons are the program button for selecting pre-configured programs, the humidifier button for easy access to the settings for the optional attachable Prisma Aqua humidifier, the on-off, which is used for powering the device on or off, and also for starting and stopping therapy, the home button, the monitor button used for switching between different screen views, 3 function buttons, the dial or rotary knob used for navigating the menu, and the alarm acknowledgement button, which can mute the sound of the alarm for 2 minutes. Let's get to know the power button. When the ventilator is shut down or asleep, press and release the power button once to bring it on into standby mode. Once you've done this, if you want to start therapy, you would do the same again. Press and release the power button once. To stop therapy, press and hold the power button until the progress bar has gone completely from left to right. This will stop therapy and bring the ventilator back to standby mode. If you then want to shut the ventilator down completely, again press and hold the power button. So, a quick depress of the power button will either turn prismaVENT 40 from off into standby mode, or start therapy if it's already in standby mode. And by pressing and holding the power button, you will stop therapy if therapy is running, or shut the device down completely if it's in standby mode. This ventilator is currently in standby mode. Let's look at the various symbols on the screen. Starting at the top left, you'll see the lock symbol. If this is locked, it means that the clinical settings are not accessible. If the symbol shows it is unlocked, then the settings in the clinical menu are available for adjustment. If the device has been shut down and is turned on into standby position, the clinical menu and settings are automatically locked. To unlock and enable access to the clinical settings, press and hold the home button, which also has a small padlock symbol beside it, until the progress bar goes completely from left to right. The clinical area is now unlocked and clinical settings can be accessed and adjusted. To lock these settings again, repeat the step of holding in the home button. Alternatively, if no button is pressed for 5 minutes, the clinical menu will automatically lock itself again anyway. Beside the lock symbol is a small rectangle with the number 22 inside. This means that this prismaVENT 40 is configured to be used with the 22mm breathing tube. The bacteria filter symbol means that this device is set to allow for the resistance of an applied bacteria filter. Moving down the screen, you'll see the current therapy mode set on the ventilator. Below this, you'll see the blower symbol with an X through it. This means the blower is currently in standby and is ready to be used. You'll also see the current time displayed in large bold digits. On the top right, you'll see information relating to the ventilation programs. With the number 1 being larger than the other numbers, this is showing that of the 3 ventilation programs available, the settings in program 1 are what will be used when therapy is started. On the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the battery symbol. If this is flashing, it means that the battery is currently charging. Beside that, you'll see the SD card symbol, showing that an SD card has been inserted and is present in the device. Accessing the system, ventilation or reports menus can be done by pressing the function button under the name of the menu you want to access. In the system menu, the first item is ventilation programs. Press the rotary knob to enter this part of the menu. The status of each of the 3 available ventilation programs or profiles will be displayed. If you require more than 1 ventilation program to be available to the patient, then 2 or more of the programs must be set to on. To change the status of any ventilation program, turn the rotary knob to select it. Press the rotary knob to highlight the setting, then turn the rotary knob to change it and press it again to confirm. To go back to the Systems menu, press the back button at the bottom. Once you're back to this menu, you can turn the rotary knob to select another part of the menu to adjust. This is how easy it is to use the rotary knob to navigate any menu. Simply turn the wheel until you reach a part of the menu that you want to adjust, press it to enter the setting, turn to adjust, and press again to confirm. The next item in the System menu is the breathing tube diameter. This is set to 22mm by default, but if you want to use a 15mm breathing tube with the ventilator, then you'll need to change this setting. The bacteria filter setting enables the device to know that a bacteria filter is being used and ensures that the generated flow and pressure will allow for this. In the clinical setting, this is normally left in the on position. However, in some home settings where a bacteria filter may not be necessary, it can be turned off. The humidifier setting enables the control of the heat setting for the optional click-on humidifier Prisma Aqua. The heat setting goes from 1 to 6. However, the humidifier button on the front panel gives easier access to this setting when the click-on humidifier is attached. The auto start setting, if turned to on, gives the user the ability to turn the ventilator on and start therapy simply by breathing through the mask. This should be left to off if this setting is not needed. Device Settings brings you into a separate menu called Device Settings. In this menu, you can adjust the volume of the audible alarm. Settings go from 1 to 4, and each time the setting is changed, an audible beep will sound, demonstrating how loud the alarm will be if left at that setting. The brightness will change the brightness of the screen between 3 stages. Here, the language setting on the device can also be changed. The service timer can be used by your engineering department as a reminder for when prismaVENT is due to be checked or have something done as part of an internal maintenance schedule. The number of months can be set as an interval, but apart from changing the internal battery every 4 years, the ventilator is maintenance free, so it may be decided by your engineering department to leave this set to off. The filter timer can simply be set to on if it's preferred to have a reminder of when the air filters are due to be changed. If this setting is activated, you'll need to reset it when the filters are changed. You can clear therapy data if the ventilator is being taken from one patient and given to another. And you can reset to factory settings, which shouldn't be necessary. Press the back button to get back to the system menu. Back in the system menu, if you select device status, you'll be able to see various pieces of information, including the serial number and firmware version. You'll also see information relating to the battery. When you enter the battery settings, you'll be able to see how full the battery is. When you enter the ventilation menu, the first item will be the available ventilation programs. Remember that in the Systems menu you had set ventilation programs 1 and 2 to on. In the ventilation menu you can choose which of these ventilation programs you want to set parameters for. Let's stick with program 1. Next, you can choose between the various ventilation modes available on prismaVENT 40. The modes available are CPAP, spontaneous mode, spontaneous timed mode, auto ST mode, which is an automatic bi-level therapy mode used for patients with mixed and complex sleep apnea, timed mode, assist pressure control ventilation mode, pressure support ventilation mode, and pressure control ventilation mode. For this training video, we'll stick with CPAP and ST modes of therapy, just to give you a feel for how to navigate around the device. To select the mode, press the rotary knob when the required mode is highlighted on the screen. Below this, you can easily enter, adjust and confirm the required pressure setting. As it's a CPAP mode, there is no pressure support, and there are no other therapy settings to adjust here, so we're straight into alarms. The high leakage alarm warns of excessive leak around the mask or in the breathing circuit. So if you want to be alerted if the leakage around the mask exceeds, for example, 30 litres per minute, then set the alarm to this value. This value can be adjusted if you want the device to allow for more or less leak before being alerted by an alarm. The rest of the alarm settings available in this therapy mode are only of use if you're using prismaVENT's optional SpO2 module. You can adjust alarm parameters for SpO2 low and high and pulse low and high. However, if you're not using the SpO2 module, you can leave these alarm values set to off and you're done. All you need to do now is connect the patient to the breathing tube and start therapy. Now let's look at ST mode. So enter the ventilation menu again and change the ventilation mode to ST and confirm. Scroll down to select and adjust further settings. Note that as you change a setting, a diagram is displayed on the left side of the screen showing the changes you're making. The IPAP can be adjusted to anywhere between 4 and 40 centimeters with prismaVENT 40. The EPAP can be adjusted between 2 and 25 centimeters. F stands for frequency, meaning the frequency of backup breaths. So this is your backup rate, and it can be adjusted and set to a value anywhere between a frequency of 0 to 60 breaths per minute. The S in ST mode means spontaneous, so once the user's respiratory rate is higher than the set backup frequency, the ventilator will follow the spontaneous inspiratory and expiratory efforts of the patient by delivering the IPAP and EPAP when the patient triggers these settings. The patient can control how long each inspiration from the ventilator will be. However, if you wish to have more influence over the inspiration time allowed, the TI min and TI max settings can be adjusted to reflect this. The TI min will determine how short the inspiration is allowed to be, shown here as being set to 0.5 seconds. And the TI max will determine how long the patient's inspiration is allowed to be, shown here as being set to 1.8 seconds. This means that the patient's triggered inspiration from the ventilator can be anywhere between 0.5 and 1.8 seconds, or anywhere between whatever these two values are set to. The TI time setting will determine how long the inspiration will be for a backup breath only, in the event that the patient fails to trigger a breath in and needs to get some help from the ventilator. This setting can be set to automatic, which will give the patient a timed inspiration which is the average inspiratory time based on the patient's triggered inspirations recorded by the ventilator. Or it can be adjusted and a manual setting can be applied for this backup inspiratory time. The setting for the patient trigger can also be set to auto, as the device has clever algorithms which continuously adjust the trigger sensitivity to meet the patient's requirements. But also this setting can be set to manual for manual adjustment of the patient's triggers. Note that as you apply manual adjustment to these settings, the diagram on the left will show the point of the patient's breath at which either the IPAP or the EPAP will be triggered by the patient. The lockout time is a feature that can help prevent auto-triggering by the patient. It can be left off or it can be turned on and a lockout time can be set. The lockout time is the portion of the beginning of expiration where attempts at inspiration will be ignored and not cause prismaVENT to trigger IPAP. The device has an automatic lockout time of 0.5 seconds, but this time can be extended manually with this setting if required. Target volume can be set to react by increasing the set IPAP up to a preset max IPAP in the event that the patient's volume drops below a set target. To use this feature, first set a target that you don't want the patient's volume to fall below. Then set the reaction speed. Step 1 is the slowest reaction time and step 3 is the fastest. Next, set a delta P, which is the amount you want to allow the ventilator to increase its IPAP pressure by if this maneuver is required. Bearing in mind the current set IPAP, you will see below what your IPAP max will be if the maximum of this pressure needs to be applied to the patient. If the patient's tidal volume drops below the set target volume, the ventilator will react by increasing the set IPAP in stages until the target volume has been reached. Once the target is reached, the IPAP will not increase further if it's not required, even though it may not have reached the max IPAP set. The stages at which the pressure will increase during this process depends on the set reaction speed. If the max IPAP is reached, but the target volume hasn't been achieved, the IPAP will not increase further. The target volume can just be left turned off if it's not required. The pressure rise controls how quickly the pressure goes from EPAP to IPAP for inspiration or from IPAP to EPAP for exhalation. There are 4 adjustment stages for each setting, and the diagram on the left of the screen will demonstrate the slope achieved. The air trap control setting, when turned on, enables prismaVENT to optimize the expiration time to avoid air trapping an intrinsic PEEP. This feature is useful for COPD patients. It can't be turned on if the volume compensation feature is activated, and if it's not required, it can just be left off. The soft start feature is otherwise known as ramp, which can be set to a time of anything between 5 to 45 minutes if required. You can set a minimum EPAP to be used to start the process. When the PINSP setting is set to on, the starting IPAP will be 2 cm above the current EPAP setting and will climb to the prescribed set IPAP over the period of time set as your soft start Tmax. Soft stop is an additional feature which will apply a gradual descent of therapy pressures when the user decides to turn the ventilator off. This can be useful for patients who don't like the feeling of the sudden disappearance of therapy pressure when the ventilator is turned off. By setting a soft stop Tmax time, it means at the end of therapy, when the user tries to turn off the device, instead of just shutting down immediately, it will gradually wind down the therapy pressures over the time period set as the soft stop max, and will then shut down at the end. The soft start and soft stop can be left turned off if not required. Next, we're on to alarms, which can be turned on to give an audible alarm for things that may happen during therapy that you want the user and/or the clinical staff to be aware of. The high leak alarm, as explained earlier, warns of excessive leak from the patient's mask or breathing circuit. It should be set to a value you're happy with so that an alarm will sound when leakage exceeds that value. Further adjustable alarms include pressure low, high pressure, apnea alarm, low volume, low and high frequency, which is low and high breath rate, and can be set to warn if a patient's respiratory rate falls below the low alarm setting or exceeds the high alarm setting. There's also low and high minute ventilation alarms, and then the high and low SpO2 and pulse alarms. All or any of these alarms, if necessary, can be turned on and set to the required values. Before we continue with any further menus, let's start therapy to see the ventilator in use. Let's press the Home button to get out of the menu and back to what you'd normally see before starting therapy. Press the Power button and now it's on. You can see the various pieces of information on the left side of the screen, including IPAP and EPAP pressure settings, the user's current respiratory rate, tidal volume and minute ventilation. You can also see the current pressures being achieved and information about any excessive leakage there might be. Currently there's none. Note the patient's IPAP setting and volume on the left side of the screen. We've got target volume turned on with a target set of 400 millilitres, and we've enabled the device to give a further 8 centimetres of IPAP if it needs to. Let's see what happens when the user's tidal volume becomes compromised. Note that the tidal volume is now dropped below 400 millilitres, and this has been picked up by the ventilator. As you can see, the IPAP is now starting to increase and keeps increasing. Once the user's tidal volume has gotten back to 400 millilitres or higher, the IPAP stops increasing as the tidal volume has reached its target. It didn't need the full 8 centimetres we allowed and only used a portion of that extra IPAP. In fact, the IPAP will now start to decrease and will keep decreasing back to the prescribed set IPAP, unless the ventilator detects another drop in the patient volume, in which case it will start to increase again. To stop therapy, press and hold the power button. When you enter the report menu by pressing the report button, you'll see another short list of items that can be viewed for information purposes. Firstly, there's an alarm list. This will show a list of any alarms that may have occurred recently, along with the date and time of the alarm. This is useful if it's reported that there was an alarm at some point, but the name of the alarm on the screen was never noted. Next, there's an event menu, which shows a list of all occurrences of therapy start and stop, and also shows information about what settings were changed and when. The alarm event list is simply a mixture of both of the previous information lists. Because they're together, it's easy to get a timeline of events, for example, if and when an alarm occurred, and if any buttons were pressed or settings adjusted before or after that alarm. The parameter summary shows all the available ventilation programs and the therapy settings applied to each. Device usage statistics gives on-screen information relating to how much the ventilator has been used. And the device status gives the firmware and battery charge information. This information list is also available in the system menu. Let's look at how the user can change from one ventilation program to another. First, let's press the Home button to show what's normally seen before the device is turned on. And also, let's lock the clinical menu by pressing and holding the Home button. Press the Power button to start therapy. You can see we're currently in ST mode. But let's say this ventilator is being used by someone who uses ST mode during the day and CPAP mode at night. We've already got ventilation program 2 set to CPAP mode at a pressure of 12 centimeters. Press the program button. The ventilation program is highlighted at the top of the screen. Turn the rotary knob to change to program 2, currently CPAP mode, and press to confirm. The ventilator is now set to program 2. It's that simple. Up to 3 ventilation programs with different therapy modes and therapy settings can be set on prismaVENT 40 and made available to your patient. However, if you're only ever using the device in a situation where you only want one therapy mode to be available to the user, press and hold the Home button to unlock the clinical menu. Enter the System menu, select Ventilation Programs, and ensure that only one ventilation program is set to On. prismaVENT can also be used with various available optional accessories. Prisma Aqua is the click-on humidifier designed to be used with prismaVENT. The lid of the humidifier can easily be removed for adding water and then reapplied. At the rear of the ventilator, there's a large button on the side. When pressed, the door will come away from the ventilator where the Prisma Aqua humidifier can be attached. Once attached, prismaVENT will automatically heat the water inside Prisma Aqua when therapy is started, and water vapour will be mixed with the airflow from the outlet at the front of the ventilator and passed on to the user through the breathing tube. To adjust the setting for heat, press the humidifier button, which will direct you straight towards the setting for adjusting the humidifier. The heat setting could be adjusted in 6 stages, setting 1 being the coolest. If the humidifier button is lit up, it means the humidifier is turned off and won't heat the water. Press and release the humidifier button once to turn the heater for the humidifier on. To remove the humidifier for refilling, simply press the large button at the rear of the ventilator and the humidifier will disconnect. Heat will not be applied to Prisma Aqua when the ventilator is running on battery. This is to save on battery life. So if the ventilator will be used in transit or if a humidifier isn't required, just fix the ventilator side door back in place. The optional prismaCheck module can be used to measure SpO2 and to connect a nurse call system. Pull away the top rubber door from the side of the device and connect prismaCheck. At the back of this optional accessory, you can see where the SpO2 and nurse call adapters would be connected. To connect SpO2, connect the SpO2 connection cable to the prismaCheck and then connect the finger sensor to the end of the connection cable. Once the finger sensor has been applied, the user's SpO2 and heart rate can be seen on the screen when therapy is running. In the alarm settings, alarms can be set to warn of excessive or insufficient SpO2 or pulse. Prisma Hibernite is the optional heated breathing tube that can be used with prismaVENT. This can be used in situations where condensation is building up in the breathing tube when the Prisma Aqua humidifier is being used. This can be connected as normal to the front of the ventilator, and the heated tube connection can be inserted into the connection above the tube. When the ventilator is being used with the Prisma Aqua humidifier and this heated tube is connected, prismaVENT will automatically heat this breathing tube to reduce condensation. If you have any questions in relation to prismaVENT 40 or any of our other ventilation devices or services, our staff at RespiCare are happy to support you. You will find a contact number on a sticker on your therapy device, but you can also call one of our free phone numbers or email us. We hope this training video has been useful and we thank you for your time.